A very good evening. I'm Haryanto Diman coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom with a special edition of The Big Story. Now, it's our final show for 2020, a year like no other, a year when life changed for all of us. From dark clouds to silver linings, we'll be looking back at the key moments of the last 12 months, how Singaporeans responded to the Covid-19 pandemic, navigated the unknown and adapted to the new normal. But first, the latest Covid-19 situation in Singapore. There were 5 new locally transmitted Covid-19 cases among the 30 confirmed today. Of the 5, 3 are a family cluster involving a harbour pilot who was detected from rostered routine testing. Now, the other 2 are family members of yesterday's sole community case who works as a marine surveyor. The remaining 25 were imported cases, including 5 Singaporeans or permanent residents and 9 foreign domestic workers. The Health Ministry said that it will start a special testing operation to test individuals who boarded the ships that the harbour pilot and marine surveyor recently worked on. Harbour pilots, marine surveyors and ship repair workers will also be tested in the coming days, regardless of their rostered routine testing schedule. Now, MOH will share more details tonight. Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Ong Sor Fern will unveil next year's budget in Parliament on February 16th. There will be live television and radio coverage on the budget on top of a live webcast on the Singapore Budget website. In a Facebook post today, Mr. Heng said that Singapore is ready to respond and adapt if the economic situation takes a turn for the worse. Singaporeans can continue to share their views and hopes for the upcoming budget through the various government and grassroots channels until January 8th. Separate, the Singapore Tourism Board is looking into a possible breach of Covid-19 safety measures on board a Royal Caribbean cruise. Photos posted on public Instagram accounts show a group of more than 10 people together on the ship, unmasked and standing less than 1 meter apart from one another. Cruise lines that do not comply with STB's Cruise Safe Penalty Framework will be subject to penalties, including fines and suspension of sailings. Now, it was a year ago today that China informed the world about a new unknown virus in Wuhan. It came to be known as Covid-19 and continues to spread around the world, having already infected and killed millions. Today on The Big Story, we want to look back at the dark clouds of 2020 and look to the silver linings for 2021. We want to reflect on the pandemic's impact on our lives this year and the topics that our readers cared about the most. Here to discuss it all are 2 members of the Straits Times team that planned and executed our coverage of the pandemic. I'm pleased to welcome News Editor Karamjit Kaur and Associate News Editor Chang Ai Lian. Welcome, Karam, as well as Ai Lian. So, Karam, Ai Lian, what are the issues that stood out for you the most this Covid-19 year?
Right, Haryanto, Ai Lian and I think all of us at ST, we've spent the entire year focused on Covid-19 reporting, and so much has happened since the first case, of course, was detected here in January. But really, I think for me, one thing that has really stood out is livelihoods. You know, this has been a year where we've seen so many companies, go bust, go into the red, and not just small companies, but even big ones, like STA Travel, for example, went bust. And if you look at the entire aviation, travel, tourism, hospitality sector, you've seen Singapore Airlines, this great national icon for many Singaporeans, literally brought down to its knees. And, at that level, you've seen companies, suffering. But I think the impact also has been on workers, right? So many people were laid off, pay cuts, shorter work weeks. We've seen families having problems trying to service housing, other loans. And that's just been something that to me has really stood out. So when we talk about, the dark clouds, for example, that would be one big area for me. But I think at the same time, when we talk about silver linings, then we talk about new opportunities that have also, come up as a result. And I think we've seen new sectors. That's right. Come up. There have been, like, if you look at the biomed pharmaceutical sectors, for example, they seem to be thriving almost. If you look at areas like green jobs, that's something that also has become quite prominent. We've seen many new jobs being created in the healthcare sector, for example. And I think also the whole push towards going digital. So that's something that Singapore has been wanting to do for a very long time. But COVID-19 has really sort of accelerated the pace. You know, we're talking about hawkers, for example, going down that whole digital push. So these are some of the opportunities, the silver linings that we've seen when we talk about livelihoods.
Right. And Alian, what about you? What stood out for you?
I think one big thing which stood out for me and many readers was that, you know, when life stood still for people during the circuit breaker, a bit of nature kind of came back. You know, and you know, we all saw the weeds growing longer, but that also meant that more bees and butterflies came back, and people were sort of able to sort of pause and appreciate what nature can do, and the fact that it can make a comeback, you know, given any opportunity.
I think we had otters at Mustafa.
Yeah, so for example, a lot of people enjoyed the otters making an excursion at Mustafa when people couldn't, right?
And of course, Karim, the other thing as well that I believe, you know, stood out was in mid of the year, something happened in the foreign workers dormitory.
Oh yes, I don't think we can talk about you know, things that stood out without talking about dormitories, without talking about migrant workers. And you know, look, migrant workers have been around for such a long time. You know, they build our homes, our infrastructure, they you know, clear our trash, cut the grass. But really, because of COVID-19, many Singaporeans for the first time got a glimpse into the lives that migrant workers lead. You know, so whether we're talking about their fears, their concerns, their mental well-being, and I think maybe most significantly, their living conditions. So, you know, these huge dorms that house tens of thousands of migrant workers, you know, some of the living conditions very cramped, you know, hygiene levels not necessarily, you know, at acceptable levels. And, you know, when cases and infections started to increase at an alarming rate in these dormitories, I think, you know, it really forced us as a nation, as a society, as individuals to ask ourselves, can and should we do more for these migrant workers, right, who really live, you know, amongst us. And I think the silver lining there, if I can just maybe come back to the team, is that, you know, we are doing something about that. And, you know, now we see the authorities, the Ministry of Manpower, the COVID-19 task force, you know, we're talking about thinning out the dorms. So there are plans to build dorms in the, you know, mid-term dorms, longer-term dorms, to really improve living conditions for migrant workers, because, you know, you need to do that. I mean, you know, things could have gotten a lot worse had these cases sort of like spilled into the community, and so many more people could have been, you know, infected. So that really is something that I think when we talk about COVID-19 and 2020, you cannot not talk about the dorms and the migrant workers.
I want to pick up on something that you mentioned, Karim, earlier on about areas of growth and development, and I want to pose this to Ailian. Food security for Singapore. There is also an area that we are looking at, because you know, we talk about, back then we talk about diversifying our food production, but now, you know, with COVID-19 we are moving towards this self-sufficiency.
So I guess most of us will not forget those long lines at the supermarkets, right? When people started worrying about will they have enough toilet rolls or will they have enough instant noodles. So, you know, our long-term goal has always been to diversify our food production, like you said, but we realized that this is not quite enough, you know, because when global supply chains are impacted, the food can't come in, right? So basically what we want to do now is to grow and produce more of our own food. So we're doing it in various ways. For example, you know, high-tech farms, we're trying to push that. So maybe you can have like condos for vegetables, that kind of stuff. And then we are also, because of our head start in research, we are doing more. We're trying to push for lab-produced meat and kind of the newer types, the more modern types of food.
So growth area in that sense as well in food security, yeah?
It is definitely a growth area.
Right. We'll take a short break because, you know, the other thing that I want to talk about as well is another watershed moment that most, if not all of us, will not forget is when the circuit breaker was imposed in Singapore to stem the virus spread. Now, what was initially supposed to be for a duration of about a month starting from April, the circuit breaker period was extended till June. And that was when we saw bustling Singapore in a different light.
Let's practice safe distancing to suppress the spread of COVID-19.
The scenes we just saw in the video were shot in May. Of course, things look quite different now. But as has been said many times, life will not return to what it used to be pre-COVID-19. So Karam, Ailian, we are living in what we call the new normal.
Yes, absolutely right. I mean, I was speaking just now about how Singapore became a bit greener earlier on, but Singapore has also become cleaner, I think. You know, for instance, what do you do when you first go home?
I make sure I wash my hands. I keep bottles of hand sanitizers in my bag. Yeah.
That's right. And, you know, this is a change which I hope that, you know, we will keep, you know, we won't discard when the risks are slightly lessened, because this focus on hygiene is very important. And that also includes mask wearing to stop the spread of germs, and has led to us having not only very successfully stemming the spread of COVID in Singapore, but for a whole host of other infectious diseases as well.
Yeah. And with mask wearing, Karam, you had a story that you shared with us before we came on, yeah.
Yes, that's right. No, so just sort of taking off from what Ailian has said, I think, you know, mask wearing has become such a normal part of our lives. When you actually leave home without your mask, you sort of feel that something is wrong. So yes, indeed, there was an incident. I actually left home without my mask, and so I, you know, got out of the lift and I was just walking. I took a few steps, and then there was this guy who was coming from the other side, and he was just staring at me, right? And I was like, you know, did something happen? You know, did I forget to put on a piece of clothing? And then, you know, and then I realized that, oh gosh, I forgot my mask. And so I sort of tried to just, you know, make it a bit funny. So I said to him, I said, oh no, I forgot my mask. And he's like, oh, you better go back and get it. And I turned back and I went to get it. Yeah, so it's just become such a normal part of life, and I don't think it's a bad thing. You know, like as Ailian said, you know, we should put on masks. You know, even after COVID-19, you know, if you have a flu, you're sneezing, you're coughing, it is the right thing to do. So I really hope that will become a permanent feature of, you know, post-COVID life as well.
And you know, besides talking about how our lives have changed in our personal aspect, professionally as well, right? Working from home, you know, that has become the default work arrangement now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, even for us at the Straits Times, you know, for quite a few months, most of the newsroom was dark because we had to jump very quickly into working from home like the rest of Singapore.
Yeah, correct. I mean, not only parents as well, even children, students had to sort of have a little change also in their routine to home-based learning.
Yes, that's right. So home-based learning is something that's become almost, to some extent, semi-permanent, I think, for students. And again, it was something that the Ministry of Education had been wanting to push for a long time. And again, because of COVID-19, you know, it sort of forced them to do this. So we had, you know, home-based learning, and it wasn't easy for parents, including myself, you know, because it's very hard to sort of motivate the kids when they're at home, and, you know, the bed is just next to your laptop and to your table. And I think it put a lot of stress on parents who had to work from home and at the same time supervise their kids at home as well. But I think it's good. It showed that yes, if we need to do home-based learning, we can, and it does, add a lot of flexibility to the whole education system, and a lot of digital tools were pushed out. It also helped us to identify, because one of the challenges when we first started home-based learning was not all students had the tools that were needed, and so you had a lot of people come forward to donate. Laptops and dongles and all that, which again is another silver lining. People really, I think, have given so much in a year that's been so difficult, and I think that's been just very overwhelming for, I think, a lot of people.
Right.
So yeah, home-based learning for sure.
And the other aspect as well that I want to touch on, and I think it's become a very stark reminder as well, because it's the end of the year, and it's usually the time of the year, the period where people go overseas, just wind down for a little bit before the new year starts. But of course, with COVID-19, that has come to a standstill as well, travel.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, recently, Karam and I both went overseas to St. John's Island.
Overseas, like literally, right? Yeah, but not to other countries yet.
Yes, that's right. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's become the new overseas. The southern islands have suddenly become very popular. But travel for sure. I think, Aileen, you were telling us you had a trip that you had to
Yes, that's right.
forgo.
Yes.
And
Karam had an anniversary boat cruise.
But I want to know about this trip, Aileen, that you had to forgo.
Well, it was meant to be a dive trip in May this year. So it's been postponed for 1 year till May next year, which by which time I don't know whether the cruise operator will still be alive, and I don't think we'll be traveling by then.
a lot of people are feeling the strain of not being able to travel. But then again, on the bright side, people are now rediscovering Singapore, right? So you have all these Singapore Rediscover vouchers. It's not just the southern islands, but people are taking Chinatown tours and Little India and Geylang and all that. So it has been nice, I guess, to some extent. It's also helped, I think, local businesses sort of regain some of the lost business. So that's not been like all bad, but definitely travel. I mean, everyone is waiting for that to happen. Yes.
Yeah, to happen again, right? Now, a year ago, we were still grappling in the dark, figuring out this new coronavirus that was spreading like wildfire across the world. But a year later, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, yesterday was a historic moment for Singapore as we began our COVID-19 vaccination program. And by the end of next year, the vaccines will likely be available for everyone here. So, Karam and Aileen, looking ahead, what do you think 2021 will look like? Will there be brighter days ahead? Will there be that ray of sunlight?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think so. If we look back at 2020, I mean, there were a lot of dark clouds, but there were some silver linings, to go back to our theme. But another one of the big things which stood out for me was the unprecedented level of cooperation between scientists, researchers, and to some extent governments and corporations, right? So, and that was how we managed to get our first vaccine within 1 year. This is like record levels, right? Record timing. So, looking ahead, if we can do something like this, it just shows that we have the capacity and capability to battle unseen foes ahead. And with our vaccine, this is giving us a lot of hope. It's not the perfect solution, and we don't know 100% everything about it yet, but it gives us the opportunity to be able to reopen our borders and reopen our economies and other countries as well.
So, Karam, I want to touch on what Aileen mentioned regarding a record of producing a vaccine in just a year. There was the vaccine race to get that vaccine out in time to make sure that we keep ourselves protected from COVID-19. But is the vaccine a silver bullet?
So I won't say it is. I mean, look, we've literally waited the entire year for this vaccine, and it's finally arrived. But I think it's also worth, pointing out that, there are people who are concerned about the safety and, the whole viability of the vaccines because it was produced in such a record time. And, we've had the Ministry of Health, again, the task force have come out repeatedly to say that, we are convinced that it's fine. And, we had the first jabs being delivered to our, healthcare workers at the NCID yesterday. But I think our sense is that there are still some people who are concerned, and I think there's going to be this huge educational campaign. We do expect that the authorities will want to come out and really explain to people, especially those who are vulnerable, those who are older. I think those 70 and above are probably going to be one of the first groups to get the jabs after the healthcare, frontline workers. They will have to be educated, and sort of like convinced that no, you should take the vaccine. It's good for you, not just for yourself, but also for your loved ones, your family members and all that. But I think the other thing worth pointing out is that it shouldn't lead people to be complacent, because although, there's this vaccine, there isn't enough that is known about it. We don't know, for example, whether, it provides, for how long it would provide you with immunity. And also, I think we've had stories about how it doesn't mean you can't get COVID, right, if you get the vaccine.
I mean, the vaccine will most likely prevent you from getting serious symptoms of COVID, but it doesn't stop. It's not known whether it will stop you from getting and passing on the virus. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which then sort of brings us back to mask wearing and washing of hands and social distancing, and just making sure that just because the vaccine is here, it doesn't mean we stop doing all this. I think that needs to continue for at least a year, if not longer.
Those basics, they still have to be carried on regardless the fact that the vaccine is here, right?
And some should continue forever, like hand washing.
Like hand washing, yeah, right? It's a good practice to keep up with, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Karim and Ailian, for setting aside time to come onto the show to share a bit more about our coverage today, and of course to weigh in on your insights as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been speaking to the Straits Times' news editor Karimjit Kaur and associate news editor Chang Ailian on the top issues that dominated our lives this COVID-19 year. Now, we have a special coverage on COVID-19 a year on in our papers today. You can also read all the stories on straitstimes.com. On the note of looking ahead and with the new year just hours away, let's go over to Dylan and Suen at the wall. Guys, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Haryanto. Keeping things festive, we'll be looking ahead to 2021 with a very special edition of Live Picks.
Something we all love, good food.
I haven't stopped eating since Christmas Eve. I think I put on a few kilos.
You're not alone, Dill. All this eating and drinking, but fewer things have given me more joy. And I'm always on the lookout for new places to try.
Now, well, Suen, today is your lucky day. Here is food editor Tan Hsueh Yun on Mad About Sucre, an award-winning restaurant back with a fresh concept and new menu.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you had a great Christmas.
Oh, I did. I ate too much too.
So, eating better is a common resolution, and we heard you've got something for us. Could you tell us a little bit more about this restaurant?
Right. So Mad About Sucre is in the Bukit Pasoh area, and it's within sneezing distance of the Outram MRT station. And yes, sneezing distance, yes. And it's 6 years old, but I've resisted going to that place just simply because of the name, right? It means mad about sugar, in French. And I'm not really mad about sugar, but it turns out that don't use a lot of sugar in the food, even in the desserts, right? And I think that this is a really good restaurant to go to in the new year when you want to eat clean and eat good tasting food, but also eat healthily. So, the chef, Eric Chan, he doesn't use a lot of salt and doesn't use a lot of sugar in his food. His sister Lina, who is the pastry chef, doesn't sweeten her desserts with a lot of sugar. She uses mainly fruit as a sweetener. So, and if you have, food allergies or intolerances, say you are gluten intolerant or you're lactose intolerant, they will very happily cater to you as well.
Wow. Now, Hsueh Yun, I've never been, of course, but if I were to go, what is one thing you say that is a must try?
Oh, heavens, you have to order the roasted cauliflower. It is so good. So it's a big chunk of cauliflower and they kind of roast it. So every part is tender, right? Even in the middle, in the stem, it's tender. And then there are like little bits of charred, edges on the outside. And then the whole thing is blanketed with this really lovely umami-filled miso glaze, and then topped with crunchy breadcrumbs, and it's just so good. So when I had it, my friend who took the first bite, right? He was chewing and he was saying, "Oh, flavors exploding everywhere," and that's exactly what it's like. A lot of flavor, not a lot of salt, not a lot of everything is just like the concentrated flavor of the cauliflower and the miso and the breadcrumbs. So you don't get a lot of sort of distraction, from the main event. So that is a definite must order. Okay.
Sounds delicious.
Wow, thank you so much, Hsueh Yun. I'll definitely write it down.
Moving on. Theatre enthusiasts like myself have been starved in 2020, with plays and musicals grinding to an abrupt halt as live performances and in-person shows were cancelled or moved online. Thankfully, this looks like it will soon change.
On the slate in 2021 includes Wild Rice's restaging of Grandmother Tongue from January 14 to 31st. The play, which debuted in 2016, is back by popular demand. Another classic back on stage is Sophocles' tragedy Oedipus Rex in a modern retelling staged by bilingual theatre company 9 Years Theatre. Here to tell us more is senior culture correspondent Ong Sor Fern.
Hi, Sor Fern. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So we're really curious, why were these two performances chosen?
Well, I'm a big fan of Wild Rice and also of this particular staging of Grandmother Tongue, because Grandmother Tongue was the first play by Thomas Lim, and he actually won a nomination for the Live Theatre Awards with his first proper script. And this is actually a very moving story about the relationship between a grandmother and a grandson. And the grandson finds a way to communicate with his grandmother, who can only speak in dialect, in Teochew.
Now, Oedipus is a classic, of course, but how do you think it will take to being performed in Mandarin?
Oh, I've been following 9 Years Theatre since it was founded like about 8 years ago. And founder-director Nelson Chia does all the translations himself. And he's translated quite a few Western classics into Mandarin, and he does a really good job with it. So for this one, I'm also looking forward to watching Mia Chi, who is the other co-founder of 9 Years Theatre. She's a great actress, and I think she'll do really, really well as Jocasta, who is Oedipus's mother.
Well, personally can't wait to see these on stage, really. Thanks so much, Sor Fern.
Like many other things this year, movie releases were also hit hard by the pandemic. Now, many highly anticipated movie releases were delayed to the disappointment of fans everywhere.
But on the upside, lots to look forward to in 2021. Here to tell us more is film correspondent John Lui.
Hey John, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Now, John, with all these exciting new releases coming up, could you tell us more about the ones you're most excited about?
Well, there are three films that I think everyone will be excited about, me included, and that's Fast and Furious 9. Can you believe it's been 9 films? Then that is beaten by No Time to Die, which is the latest James Bond film, and that's like, I don't know how many thousand films already. And then Black Widow, which is the latest Marvel superhero movie.
So John, I know it's quite hard to pick, but out of the three, which one are you most excited about and why?
Well, I'm curious about No Time to Die, the James Bond one, because Daniel Craig, who's been wearing the James Bond tuxedo for, I don't know, several films already, this is going to be his last one. I know he said he was going to retire last time, but this could be his last one. This will probably be his last one. So after this movie, who's the next James Bond? I'm curious to know.
Thanks so much, John. Very excited to watch it. So many things coming up in 2021.
You know what, I guess I'm going to be broke now.
Indeed, you will. And, on another note, now that we're finally at the end of 2020, I think it's time for some reflection. It's been a crazy year for all of us. But I wonder, what are your hopes for 2021? For me, I'm excited to spend even more time with friends and family.
No, I think for me, I'm just going to keep it simple. I just hope that the COVID-19 situation will get better and we can, return to life to somewhat, to return to life as what we know,
Yeah. And I think that would entail, I suppose, travel, right? I think a lot of us, especially during this holiday season, it's a time where people always travel, but I guess, this time around we can't. But hey, we can still rediscover Singapore.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, what about you guys? Let us know what are your plans and resolutions for the new year. Tell us in the comments below. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Dylan Ang and Tan Hsueh Yun. Happy New Year from all of us at the Straits Times, and see you next week for more stories on The Big Story.